What's up, YouTube? Getting ready to build another custom rod. Last time I just kind of made a video of the process and sped it up, and then just kind of did an overview at the end. There are so many other how to build a rod videos out there that I felt like anything that I would do would just, be boring and just a rehash of what everybody else has done. But showed my cousin the rod, showed him the video. He's like, "Hey, you really ought to do a full video the next time you build a rod." So I thought that I would. So the first thing I usually do is unpackage my blank, obviously. Get all my parts out. So I've got all my eyes laid out there. This is going to be a spinning rod. This is a 7-foot medium light fast. It's a point blank. If you've never heard of them, you really ought to check them out. These are amazing blanks. They are so light, but yet so strong, very sensitive. I've built this rod once before. It has a full cork handle, Fuji seat, and then a cork foregrip, and Fuji eyes. Those are alkanite eyes. Anyway, the total weight of the rod completed was like 3 3/4 ounces, somewhere between 3 1/2, 3 3/4 ounces. Very, very light. The guy loved the rod, so I'm actually building another one. So the first thing I do is get my blank laid out, got all my parts laid out, and then I kind of just lay my handles, up against the blank and kind of measure them out, and then I put like a little mark. It's hard to see because I do it with Sharpie, but I put a little mark where the end goes. You can see there that it says seat, so that's the section where my real seat will go. And then I've got another little mark for where the end of my foregrip should land. Anyway, that just kind of helps me lay it out. It also helps when I'm spreading the handle glue on the blank. I know exactly where to spread it between the lines that I've marked. So the first step is actually getting the handle on. This is a 9-inch tapered cork grip. It's a little tang there. I've marked it because it's actually a little bit long for the butt cap I'm going to use, so I'll have to trim a little of that off. But they come with just a 1/4 inch hole all the way through, and obviously that blank is larger than a 1/4 inch in diameter. So I have these handy reaming tools here. It's basically just a piece of fiberglass with sandpaper wrapped around it. They make different kinds that probably work a lot better, but this is about the cheapest thing you can buy, and that's what I have at the moment. It still works pretty good. I just stick them in my drill and ream out the hole, stepping up in size until it will slide on the blank. So that will be our first step. Okay, so the reamer kit comes with 4 different size tapered reamers. It starts with the smallest, and you work your way up. So I started with the smallest, and then I moved my way up to the second. And as you can see, I've still got quite a ways to go, because that's how far down the blank I've made, and I've still got to come all the way down to the end. So there's where my handle was sitting, and I've got to get it all the way down here to the end. So I'm going to have to use the number 3 size reamer all the way up to the full point of the taper to get that to go all the way down. Alright, so I've just used the number 3 size reamer. Again, there are 4 in the kit. This is the smallest, number 2. Number 3 is what I got out, and then there's the largest. and run it all the way through the handle. And now it's time to see if it'll slide all the way down the blank. Alright, so I've reamed it out with the number 3. And it still doesn't quite go all the way to the end. Alright, so I hit this this handle with the number 3 reamer just a little bit more. And as you can see, it slid perfectly all the way to the end of the blank. There's the end. And it slides freely all the way down. So I'll just need to trim off a little bit of that excess cork, line that up, line it with the end of the blank, mark where the front of it is sitting again, or check my mark from earlier, spread my epoxy on it and slide the cork back down, and it'll be in place. Then we'll move on to the reel seat and the foregrip. Alright, so our next step is to mix this up some glue. This is U40 Rod Bond. It's a 2-part epoxy, the hardener and the resin. What you want to do is get an equal amount of both. I always try to wipe the end of my stick off before I scoop me out some of the resin or hardener, whichever one I did first, so that you don't cross-contaminate your containers. You start mixing them together. At first they'll turn a little yellow, but then the more you mix, the more kind of milky white it'll become. That's what you want. You want it to get back to kind of that pasty milky white. And then you just start spreading it on your blank. And again, that is the purpose of making the mark, because I know how far up to spread my epoxy on the blank. I'm just using these little cheap nylon brushes from the hobby store. It doesn't take a lot of this stuff. Just kind of get a good even coat. You notice I'm not putting any on the last inch or so. The reason for that is when I start sliding the handle down, some of this is going to push to the end and coat that last little bit. And if I had it coated as well, then when I slide the handle down, it would just push all of it right off the end of the blank and make a mess. And I learned that the hard way. Slide that handle, kind of rotate your blank so that it covers the inside of the cork with the epoxy nice and even. Get it right to the end. Make sure it's good and flush. And it is. And then just let it sit. And this stuff usually takes all night to harden. It's one of the things I'm not as crazy about this kind that I've got. It takes a lot longer to set up. And when you're doing the handle, you pretty much have to put the whole handle on and then just let it sit overnight to get good and hard before you can keep going with the rest of your build. The last stuff I had set up in a couple of minutes, and within 15 minutes it was set. Of course, it needed 24 hours to cure completely, but it was set enough within 15 minutes that I could keep working without worrying about it sliding off or moving around on me. But this stuff, it takes several hours to get to that point. So usually what I do, and I'm out of it, I need to get some more, is I use this stuff, which takes a lot longer to cure, but it'll also last a lot longer. The slower the cure, the longer it'll last. It won't get hard and brittle like some of the quick curing epoxy. So it's going to give you a lot longer life on your handle. So normally what I do is I mix up a bunch of that, spread it evenly across my blank, and then mix up just a little bit of the 5-minute stuff and put it in one or two little places, and then slide my handle down and the 5-minute will cure and be hard and set within 15 minutes, and I don't have to worry about the handle moving on me. But then the other stuff can cure overnight, and you don't get the brittleness of the quick. So you get the best of both worlds by doing that. Within 15 minutes you can keep working, your handle's not going to move on you. But using this stuff is what I recommend, the slow cure bond, because you just get better life out of it. So we're at our next stage here. Our handle is good and secure, it's nice and dry, and what I've done is made my own reel seat arbor out of tape. Most reel seats come with these little foam, let's see if I've got one not in a package. Yeah, these kind of little foam arbors, they're kind of pieces of crap, because when you try to ream out the inside to get it to fit over the rod, they just fall apart. As you can see, the diameter of this one is the same diameter of the rod, which would mean I'd have to pretty much just destroy it to even get it to go on. You can get different size ones, but again, I don't like them. They're hard to fool with. They make a mess. I just don't care for them. The more research that I did when I started building rods, the more I found that using tape to build up the seat a little bit is a very common practice. Pretty much all builders do it, even large companies that you can go and buy their rods off the shelf at the store. They do it. It's pretty much common practice, and really it doesn't serve any purpose other than to get the diameter up to the inside diameter of the seat. So I will fill up this entire area with epoxy. Again, as I mentioned earlier, some of the slow cure U40 rod bond, that'll cure nice and slow. It'll give a good hold. This reel seat should never move. And then I'll mix in a little bit of the quick cure as well, just to keep it from going anywhere. I'll fill in these empty spaces with epoxy, fill in around the tape, around the edges, so that it bonds the tape to the blank and the seat to the tape and to the blank. Basically, I'm just gonna give a really good heavy coat of epoxy to this whole area. Get everything coated real good, slide the reel seat over it in place, and then a lot of times once I get it where I want it, I'll go back and wrap a little tape around the end here just to make sure that it doesn't move. And I know what some of you are thinking, why are you putting that reel seat on backwards? I haven't reamed out this piece of cork yet, but it is a VSS adapter. So this piece of cork actually slides onto the reel seat there, and they kind of marry together. Looks real nice. Normally you see this at the bottom, but occasionally you will see it kind of reversed like this with the hood on the bottom, and this piece towards the top of the blank. And that's the way this customer wanted it. He sent me a picture and said, I want my handle done like this, so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing what he asked me to do. And it actually looks pretty cool when it's all finished. Even though technically it's on backwards, so to speak, it actually looks really good when it's done. Anyway, I'm gonna lather up this blank with some epoxy and get this seat on there. What's up, everybody? Back at it again. Last time we talked, I was getting ready to epoxy this reel seat on. It is on. It is good and secure. Epoxy's nice and dry. One of the other things that the customer asked me to do was to taper the end of this grip down a little bit. You can see it doesn't taper much at all. So I'm going to use some sandpaper, some light sandpaper, and just run around it and taper that down a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my reamers to get a nice taper and ream the inside of that out so it fits on my blank nice. And I'm going to take a little bit off of the outside here and taper that down, and I'll show that to you when I'm done. Alright, got her all reamed out and tapered down. I don't know how well you can tell, but you can see I did taper the nose down just a little bit there with a piece of sandpaper. So that is what the real seat's going to look like, the handle and the foregrip. I'm just going to brush a little bit, a real thin layer. It doesn't take much of this stuff. A real thin layer here on this real seat where the cap will sit. Again, it doesn't take a lot, so I just kind of want to get a nice even coat on the entire surface. Really thin coat, as thin as I can get it. Just going to brush the rest of it around the blank. Again, a fairly thin coating. Doesn't take a lot, and any excess is just going to be pushed up with the end of the handle, and you'll get just a big mess. Which in this case, this type of foregrip's a little more forgiving because the end of it is open and it's going to slide up over that. So any excess that's pushed up inside of this little groove here, if y'all can see that, in the excess inside that groove is just going to fill that hole and fill in around the end of this seat. This one's actually really forgiving in that sense, but if you get a little extra in there, it's not going to push out the end and show, and you have to clean that up. This one you don't have to worry so much about that because it has somewhere to, the glue has somewhere to go. I'm just going to rake, try and press a little bit of it up in the inside, the end of the seat there, to make sure the end of my seat is nice and secure to the blank. Kind of just go around that a couple times. Make sure I got a good coating everywhere. Alright, and then I will just slide this right into place. Yeah, that looks good. And hold it good and tight. Alright, one other thing that I like to put on here is this winding check. Sometimes I use aluminum ones and they always end up looking really nice, but I'm just using this little rubber one this time. As you can see, you just kind of got a crack showing there at the end of your foregrip. So I'm taking this little rubber winding check and I'm just going to push it up nice and tight. Use my little burnishing tool here against the end of my foregrip. Not only will that help hold the foregrip in place while it's drying, because that little rubber winding check's pretty tight, but it also looks really nice, and it's a good way to just kind of clean up the end of your handle. And then when I get ready to do some wraps, I'll wrap my thread right up against the end of this winding check and do like a nice little thread detail there, maybe an olive branch or something.